Good afternoon all. Welcome to Student Revision Tutorials Unit 1 with Mathematical Methods. My name is Rodney Anderson and the webinar we're looking at today is Arithmetic and Geometric Sequences. I'm a mathematics teacher at Moreton Bay College here in Brisbane, and here are our learning intentions for today. So we'll define arithmetic and geometric sequences in the calculator application, evaluate defined functions in the calculator application, generate recurrence relations, solve simultaneous equations in the calculator application, solve simultaneous equations in the graph application. The questions I'll be going through today are those that are on the screen. I won't read through those. You could recall the questions, or if you're watching this video at a later date, you can rewind and fast forward during the recorded video and work through the questions before you look at the examples from myself. The screen you're seeing now is the teacher premium software, the CX, the non-cas version. So the first question. The first question was determine the first 7 terms of the sequence defined by Tn is 3n plus 5. I've opened the calculator application. I like defining functions using the control, the colon equals. So what I'm going to do is define my function, T of n, use the arrow keypad of the nav pad, go control, define, and I'm going to have 3n plus 5. And when I press enter, I've told my computer or calculator to say, hey, I've defined this, I can work with this. Now, just as a side here, because we defined it, it's actually stored in through here. Can you see where my cursor is there? There's a store keypad above the variable. Some people like going control store, but as I said, personally I like the control and that. And you can also do it through the menu to define, but everybody does it differently. So what I could do, I can work out the 5th term. All I could do is press the variable keypad, press enter, and say, what's the 5th term? There it is there. Or some people like pressing what the defined variable is, brackets, and let's do the 9th term. There we are, 32. But the question said determine the first 7 terms of the sequence defined by Tn is 3n plus 5. Now, there's a few ways of doing this, but a very important keypad on the calculator is the catalog. Right next to it is the templates. We'll look at through the session. But in the catalog, if I press catalog, can you see that it's actually got 6 tabs? I'm in tab number 1. So if I just press A, you'll see it goes right at the top of the commands listed at A, and we've got from A through to Z. So I want sequence. So I'll just press S and use my arrow key to come down to sequence, and we'll stop here. The syntax, sequence, expression, comma, the variable, the low and the high, which means how many terms, so the first 1 through to 7, and we can step up in 1. You can change the steps or whatever you want to. So there is the syntax required. So let's go back to here. If you're ever looking for some commands, it's all the catalog, but let's go through with the menu. And you come through here and you can look through there and you think, where would sequence be? Until you get comfortable with it, you can actually find your sequence command through there. But to get out of that menu, we can just press escape and escape again. So I like actually pressing the catalog. We're a sequence. I press enter. And what we could do, now we could type in 3n plus 5, but we've defined the actual sequence. So what we could do is press the variable keypad, enter, and say n, hop outside, and we actually, the variable and the comma is the left-hand corner, n, comma, we want the first 7 terms, 1, comma, 7, and the step size is 1. Let's press enter. All right, so we've got the set of the first 7 terms. Now, some students and staff, they know that if you just type in S, E, see how the SNL italic. As soon as I press Q, it's a stored command that turns into an upright position, and we can actually develop our setting out and syntax required for that. So I'm going to delete the whole line. I can use the delete button. What I could do is go Control and delete clears the whole line. Now, there's a little powerful extra here. If I press the catalog, in through here are all the units, symbols template. I like number 5. You could press number 5, or you can just click up here, use the computer or the software, just press number 5. Can you see here that, I've already highlighted it for us, that we have the sum. If I just actually move around the screen, can you see that we actually have all the templates and the description at the bottom? So I'm going to come back to the sum. I'm actually going to press enter to send it back to the calculator, and here we have the sum command. So I can actually do the sum. So a traditional question of adding extra here, if I actually want to find the sum of the first 10 terms, I can say to the computer, pressing tab between templates, I want to actually sum the first 10 terms of an arithmetic sequence. And if I just press tab, now you can either use your arrow key or the tab, we can actually tab across to the actual entry of the formula. Now because I've defined it, I can just say the variable, enter, and I want, say, the first 10 terms of the sequence. And if I just press enter, then we have 215 terms. Now, you could actually go and find the template again. As a good feature of the calculator and computer, if you go up once, twice, and then press enter, that's a lovely feature of actually copying and pasting down. So if I can come back inside and use the delete keypad and type in the sequence 3n plus 5, and then press enter, I get the same answer. That's wonderful, isn't it? So it's the first question. So if you're doing a question on a tech active exam, my advice, our advice to you is always start a new problem. Don't delete these files, because at the end of the exam, you should have all your questions in individual problems so you can actually check your answers at the completion of the exam instead of trying to type it all in again. So it's there. So this is question 1 we've just looked at. So what we can do, so you press the document keypad, select insert, and a new problem. Now I'm going to add a calculator. Now can you see up in the tab we've got problem 1, had application 1 or page 1, this is problem 2. We had defined variable in here. Now if I press the variable keypad now, can you see there's no variable defined here? So it's like a new document within a document. It's wonderful. So question 2. We need to use the calculator to generate the sequence defined by the recurrence relation. So I've opened a calculator application there. So what I can do, how I can do some calculations, I might use the document keypad or control page, but I personally like using control I. You've got a computer in your hands, control I, control V, control C all work. So let's add a listen spreadsheet. And then we have our listen spreadsheet. Now, we need to add a sequence. So in this listen spreadsheet, press menu, then we select data, then we select generate sequence. So let's press number 5. Let's have a look. So we need the formula U of n. So what's U of n going to be? Now because it's a sequence, it's U brackets n minus 1, close brackets, and minus 3. And we tab, we'll use the arrow key down, and we say the initial term is 7. So let's look at this. The recurrence relation was, according to the question, Tn, but in the syntax here, we're using just U. So we have the previous term, subtract 3 in the initial term. So let's have a look at it. We need to actually generate the first 10 terms, or 20 terms, whatever you want. But I'm just going to leave it as 1 to 255, stepping up in 1. So say to it, and then we have it. So the first term is 7, subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3. Now, as you see here, you can see down the bottom here that the formula cell here for the column was generated by, even though it was in here, so that's the formula cell for the whole column. If you look at this here, there's a sequence generator. And what it does, you can use that type of command in a calculator application. So if I look at this, I've got my recurrence relation. The variable is n, so it's actually, the term is u, 1 to 255, initial term is 7. If I click into here, you can see it's stepping up in ones. So if I go back to the calculator, now see up in 2.1, I can click into here, or I can use the control left arrow keypad. I'm back in the calculator. Now if I press the catalog and I select 1, see how I've got sequence here just before. Now if I actually just scroll down a little bit further, can you see the sequence generator? And can you see it's actually quite detailed? There's actually information here that says, there's a whole lot of information here that you require, as you saw, that we can actually do that. So look at that. Now let's press escape to get out of there, so just as a reminder. So some people generate sequences in a lesson spreadsheet. Some people like generating it in a graph application. So if I just press Control I for insert, I'm going to add a graph application. And you see that we're actually 2.2 within the actual document 2.1. So how do I get a relation or a sequence here? So the first thing you could do is press menu. Sometimes I'll just press menu in here to show you that I'm just pressing menu. Then you'll see what we're going to look at. So look at menu. Then you go to graph entry. Then it says sequence, and then we have a sequence. So if you're using the calculator, you would press graph entry, sequence, and then sequence. I'm just showing you within the software that you can actually use it within the software of this situation. Now, be careful here. See, it's the first sequence. So with this, I need to type exactly how it appears, u, brackets, n minus 1, outside of there, subtract 3, and we tab down, and the initial term was 7, wasn't it? And there we have it. Now, when I press enter, it'll graph a sequence. So the first term is 7 way up here and keeps on going through there. So that doesn't tell us the sequence. So what I could do is to show you the sequence. If you want to see a table any time, you press Control T for table. Let's have a look. First term is 7, second term is 4, third term is 3, and so on. You can look through there, quite a few sequences there. So with problem 2, we can actually see the table. Now, if you want to get out of the table, press Control T again, but I'm just going to leave it there and part of our problem. So in the exam, I've done question 2. I'm now up to question 3. So I'm actually going to press Document, Insert a new problem. I'm now doing question 3. So with question 3, it says the 12th term of arithmetic sequence is 9 and 25th term is 100. Determine the first term and the difference, hence determine the 8th term. Now, because we've got some information here and you've got to determine the term and the difference, I often say to the students, two unknowns, maybe 2 equations, 2 unknowns. So let's define the actual arithmetic sequence term. So we're going to actually go T brackets N Control define, and we're going to have A plus brackets N minus 1 outside of brackets, and always remind students to put in the multiplication symbol, and we've got the difference, haven't we? So there's our term. Now, press enter was to tell the computer that we've defined this. Now, just as a reminder, this is a new problem, so the only defined variable is what we've just put in. So we'll just press variable, so see that. So let's press escape. Now, we want to solve this. So we're thinking maybe simultaneous equations. So let's go to menu. And where would simultaneous equations, what menu would it be under? Obviously, algebra and solve system of linear equations. number 2. And we've got 2 equations. Now, just be careful here. I've actually defined them to be A, N, and D. But according to this information, we've actually got N being defined because we've actually got the 25th term, the 12th term. So we need the variables to be A and D. So let's tab down and we go A, comma, D. And we say yes, we're happy. So let's type in our equations. Now the 12th term is 9. So variable 12th term is equal to 9. And we said the 25th term was 100. So you can either use the variable keypad or if you want to type T, but we're happy using the variable keypad. So we've got the T, 25, up outside, equals 100. So we tell the computer, hey, substitute in 12, and we're going to get A plus 11D is 9, got the 2 simultaneous equations. And when we press enter, check the syntax, everything looks pretty good. We've got the first term being negative 68 and the difference being 7. Now, we could define A and D, but the question said determine the 8th term. So what we could do is just look at this and say negative 68 plus, keep it simple, and we wanted the 8th term, so it's going to be 8 minus 1 multiplied by, and what's the difference? 7, press enter, there's our 8th term. So linking through defining and solving simultaneous equations. So that's question 3. Now you know what I'm going to say now. We're doing question 4. What have we got to do? Insert a new problem. Now in this particular question, we've got to determine the first 5 terms of the geometric sequence defined by 4 by 3 to the n minus 1. We're going to determine the 9th term and which term of the sequence is 2916. So let's add a calculator application. So generally, I like to define all my variables, as you've seen with this. And because it's a geometric sequence, I'm going to go 4 multiplied by 3 to the exponent n minus 1. Press enter. We've told the computer, thank you, you've defined it, and let's help us. Now, it says determine the first 5 terms of the geometric sequence. So it's a sequence, so you could type in SEQ brackets, or you can press the catalog. Oh, let's go back up to here, press sequence, hit it again, press enter, so we've got our sequence. Now, because we've defined it, let's see if the actual TN works. So let's have a look. Variable, T, N. Now, we need to do comma, N for the variable, comma, we needed the first 5 terms, 1, 5, and let's have the actual increment being 1. So we want the first 5 terms of that geometric sequence, press enter, there you go. Looks right, doesn't, because the first term being 4 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. We could still actually use sequence and actually type that in, and we've generated our sequence. Now it says determine the 9th term. Let's have a look. Because you've actually got the variable defined, press enter, and press 9, and then press enter, there's the 9th term. Now which term of the sequence is 2916? So because remember this is a non-cas calculator, we still can use numerical solve. We don't have a lot of the features of the CAS calculator, but let's look at the numerical solve again. So you can actually type in nsolve and recall it because it's a use command. So let's have a look. So we'll go menu, algebra. Now when I say algebra, I don't say press number 3, press number 2. I always say the word because menus can look different from page to page. So when I say algebra, I'm actually saying to my students, myself, press number 3, or can use the arrow keypads of the nav pad. So select number 3, numerical solve, and we're ready to go. So we want to solve the T of n. So let's do it a different way. Let's go T. Remember, it's bolded because it's defined. Brackets. N. And the term actually is 2,916. With respect to the variable N. So let's press enter. It's the 7th term. Let's have a look. Let's see if it's right. There's the 5th term. So if you multiply by 4, then by 4 again, okay, we should be fine there. So we've got that situation. Now, let's open a new problem. Document, insert, new problem, and this time the first term of a geometric sequence is 5 and the 10th term is 2,560 to determine the 7th term. So I'm going to add a calculator application. Let's go back to the previous problem. Let's have a look. So we've got here in the sequence multiplied by 3. I think I said before multiplied by 4, silly me. Looking at 100 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3, because in my mind I'm thinking that doesn't seem right, but I've actually looked at the first term, which is 4, 5.1. Back to 5.1. Now, I'm defining T bracket of N, up outside, control, define, A multiplied by R to the exponent N minus 1. And we told the computer, thank you, you've defined that, well done. And the first term of the arithmetic sequence is 5. Now, because I've actually got really 3 variables here, we don't want that. So what I could do is say, is A actually 5? So we're going to actually have 2 variables stored here. So if I press the variable keypad again, we've got A and T. I press escape. Now remember, if you need to get out of anything, always press escape. Now, we want to solve for what? We've actually got N, we've got R, because we've got the 10th term, so we know that N is 10. So what we can do is actually solve for R. So I'm doing a lot of solving today with this situation. We could do things graphically, but the focus is on looking at the calculator application. So if I go to Menu, Algebra, Numerical Solve, and let's have a look. Because I've defined it as a 10th term, so I might actually press the variable, select T, 10, and the 10th term is 2,560, and comma, and what are we solving with respect to? It is the, I like calling the unknown, but the variable R. Let's have a look. So we've actually got N is 10, we've got A is 5, we press enter. Okay, so we said the ratio is 2. Now, sometimes in geometric sequences, sometimes you'll actually have a plus. We could have a minus value as well. So you've got to be very careful. Let's use the copy feature. So what I'm going to do is say, right, go up 1, go up 2, and then press enter. We can say, could the ratio be negative? Let's have a look. Now, we need to actually say to the computer, I know it's 2, but I want to see if there's anything less than 2. So let's go control equals, and we open up the inequalities and the very, very important symbol given for restriction. So if I select that, and we're going to say R, control inequalities, less than 2. So we're going to tell the computer, are there any values less than 2 for R? Let's press enter. No solution found. But sometimes you've got to be very careful that there can be 2 positives and 2 negatives. Sometimes you might never know. You just never know. So go back up twice again, press enter. I'm going to come back, delete, and change my inequality to greater than 2. Now, because it said 2, there'll be a message that pops up, or not a message that pops up, a little symbol that it's actually looking for solution. You've actually found it. So when I press enter, it says the message. We won't worry about looking at the message because you've already found it. So you've actually found that R is 2. And if we want the 7th term, the simple thing to do would be the first term was 5 multiplied by, now the ratio was 2, the exponent, the seventh term, 7 minus 1. We could define what R is and actually redefine the actual sequence, and 320 is the seventh term. So you've just done question 5. You're doing really well in your technology active exam, doing a lot of defining the actual variables and solving, numerical solving. There's other ways of doing this, whatever you feel comfortable. So the most important thing is you have not started a new document every time, or you've actually just got one document and that's 100 pages, 100 lines long. So you've kept it together. So last question. For the geometric sequence 3, 12, 48, determine how many terms must be added together to obtain a sum of 16,383. Inserting a new problem, and we're going to have a calculator application. Now, with your exam, you may or should have your formula sheet, but you remember the sum of a geometric sequence. So you've looked at the sequence, there's 3, 12, 48. The first term is 3. We've actually got a ratio of 12 happens of 12 divided 3, which is 4. So what we could do, actually, you could define the actual individual term, but what we can do is just go straight into the formula. We want to solve something, don't we? So we need to actually go into menu, algebra, numerical solve, and we know the actual sum is 16,383. Is equal to. Now, with my classes and myself personally, if you see a rational expression or a rational number, I always use the rational number or expression template, which is control, divide. So it's actually going to be 3 multiplied by brackets 4 to the exponent n, pop down off the exponent, subtract 1, and tab, or use the down arrow key, come to the bottom, and actually have 4 minus 1, right arrow key, comma, and we're solving with respect to n. Now just have a look at this here. So we've actually got to find what the term is. So we've got solve, and let's press enter. There should be 7 terms. Now, as I showed you early on in the webinar, you may look at another way of solving this. What we could do is actually look at the sum command. So I still need to solve it. So let's go to the menu, algebra, numerical solve. Now, we need to show that the sum command of this particular sequence is 16,383 when you look at that. So let's go to our template. We can go to the catalog, but I'm going to use the template keypad. Now, with this template keypad, can you see I've actually left it identified here? There's no instruction or name. You just get used to it. You know what it is. I want to actually have the summation command, and we need to actually have n equals 1, tab up to n, and we actually have our sequence. Now remember, the first term was 3 multiplied by 4 to the exponent n minus 1. And what does all that equal? The 16,383. Now remember, we're still not finished because we're still solving. We need the correct syntax. We need to say comma n. So let's have a look, see what we've got here. We've actually got solving this equation using the summation command, and we're actually trying to solve for n, and we press enter. Let's have a look. We will actually have 7. So, throughout the webinar, I demonstrated there's lots of actually defining variables, using numerical solve, evaluating defined variables. Just as a reminder, doing a tech active exam, you're doing this tech active exam, you're actually creating a new problem, and pretend I've just finished the exam. I can just go control left. I need to go back and check question 4. Let's have a look at it again, maybe do something else here as well. I can go all the way back. Just as a reminder of navigation, if I hit the control up, you'll see they've actually got all the problems listed. Can you see problem 2 has got 3 pages? Problem 1's got the 1 page. I press enter, I'm back to problem 1, and you saw the very first question that we did of those commands. So to go along with this particular webinar, there is actually a worksheet that will be on the Texas Instruments Australia website. Has work solutions, screen captures, and you'll look at those commands. There'll be slight hints to the side, but best of luck, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And until next time, bye for now.